Breaking news today. In New Jersey, a panel predominantly appointed by Democrats has blocked the president's nominee for top prosecutor, only for the Justice Department to dismiss their replacement just hours later. This raises a critical question. Who's really in control, elected officials or appointed judges? Stay tuned for more updates.
Hello, and welcome to That News Show, where we discuss the latest facts, fakes, and hypocrisy as reported by the legacy media. Let's roll the tape.
CNN reports that the Department of Justice has dismissed the newly appointed U.S. attorney in New Jersey, Alina Habba, after a judicial panel voted against her continuation in the role. This raises a critical question: who truly controls justice in America? Here, federal judges, many appointed by Democrats, have used a technicality to obstruct a Trump-aligned attorney, only to see the administration swiftly remove their own appointee. This situation goes beyond a mere legal dispute. It challenges the very essence of democracy in America. When unelected judges and bureaucrats can overturn decisions by the people's elected president, it prompts us to reconsider the balance of power. This battle over what justice means in the U.S. extends far beyond New Jersey. You won't want to miss this.
The Attorney General Pam Bondi fired Grace, and she put out this statement. She said politically minded judges refused to allow Alina Habba to continue in her position, replacing Alina with her assistant. The Department of Justice does not tolerate rogue judges, especially when they threaten the president's core Article 2 powers. Now, to be clear, this is not a usurpation of the president's Article 2 powers.
The recent events in New Jersey exemplify the judicial activism and bureaucratic overreach eroding public trust in our institutions. A panel of judges predominantly appointed by Democrats recently blocked a Trump-aligned prosecutor from her duties. When her assistant, a seasoned professional with a solid Republican background, was promoted, the Department of Justice, led by Attorney General Bondi, intervened to remove her as well. This scenario extends beyond a single office or state. It reflects a broader pattern where unelected officials undermine the executive branch and consequently the electorate's choice. It's concerning to see judges use obscure powers to sideline officials who don't align with their political views. This behavior suggests that the judiciary is more focused on protecting its interests and pushing a specific agenda rather than impartially upholding the law. Such actions by the Department of Justice, especially the swift removal of a respected Republican prosecutor, highlight the entrenched resistance to genuine reform within these institutions. This issue isn't new. During the previous Democratic administration, bureaucrats and judges often delayed or blocked policies they opposed, disregarding the electorate's preferences. The current administration is openly challenging such practices, recognizing them as attempts to weaponize the legal system against those who dare to challenge the status quo. Instead of concentrating on protecting American families and enforcing the law, these officials engage in political gamesmanship, demanding more taxpayer funds to support their operations. The loss of faith among Americans in these supposedly independent institutions is understandable. The Department of Justice and the federal judiciary should not serve as instruments for political retribution or ideological battles. They ought to be accountable to the public, operating within constitutional bounds. The executive branch is justified in appointing officials who align with its vision and have the backing of the elected administration. This situation underscores the need to control the federal bureaucracy, demonstrates why judicial appointments are critical, and reminds voters to stay alert to attempts at undermining democratic processes through covert maneuvers and procedural ploys. To ensure our government truly serves the people and not just a political elite, we must address these challenges not only in the courts, but across all areas of federal administration.
What I can say is legally, it seemed like this was an unlawful termination because while the Attorney General, by statute, does have the authority to appoint an interim U.S. attorney, they do not have the authority to fire one.
The statute is clear. While the Attorney General has the authority to appoint an interim U.S. attorney, they do not have the power to dismiss one who has been duly appointed by the judiciary. This situation exemplifies how some officials may prioritize consolidating power over respecting the separation of powers, a principle that has safeguarded American liberty for centuries. When the Department of Justice attempts to remove a respected bipartisan U.S. attorney following a lawful judicial appointment, it calls into question the integrity of our institutions and the very rule of law. This issue extends beyond a single office in New Jersey. It signals a concerning trend of bureaucratic overreach and the politicization of justice. The involvement of judges appointed by Democratic presidents is notable, suggesting actions that could undermine the executive branch's mandate from the voters. This isn't merely a theoretical issue. It has tangible implications for justice administration and public safety. The partisan divide is evident. On one side, an administration strives to enhance accountability and prioritize public safety, but faces obstacles from judges and bureaucrats intent on preserving their influence. On the other, Democratic senators and their judicial allies employ procedural technicalities to block officials who don't align with their ideological preferences. This underscores the importance of judicial appointments and the Senate's critical role in shaping the future of federal law enforcement. There's an urgent need for policy reforms to define the boundaries of judicial involvement in executive appointments more clearly. Without such reforms, unelected officials and partisan judges will continue to exploit loopholes, undermining the public's will. This is particularly perilous as we near another election cycle, with significant implications for federal agency and court control. If unchecked, these trends will only deepen public distrust in institutions perceived as serving political elites rather than the common good. To restore accountability and transparency, taxpayer dollars should focus on enforcing the law and protecting communities, rather than being wasted on endless litigation and bureaucratic disputes. The ongoing pattern of democratic obstruction and judicial activism must be addressed. It is time for Congress to act to ensure that the executive branch can operate as intended under the Constitution. The American people deserve a government that is responsive, effective, and truly accountable to its electorate.
She served him in a personal capacity prior to his presidency, and that's also concerning for someone who is a U.S. attorney. And finally, what's just really so unusual here is that the U.S. attorney is a position that's very consequential because that person signs every single criminal charging document that is returned in that.
CNN's coverage of recent executive appointments again shows a bias, framing actions as overreach predominantly under Republican administrations, while similar moves by a judiciary filled with Democratic appointees receive less scrutiny. The focus on Alina Habba, a former personal attorney for President Trump, now nominated as U.S. attorney, suggests a bias that overlooks the common practice of presidents appointing allies, regardless of their political affiliation. The core issue here is the unusual intervention by a panel of mostly Democrat-appointed judges who use their statutory powers to override the executive's appointment. This action goes beyond a routine check and balances, representing a significant overstep of judicial authority over the executive's constitutional role in appointing officials to uphold federal law enforcement priorities. The Department of Justice's quick response to replace the judge's nominee was a necessary move to maintain executive prerogative, not a sign of a constitutional crisis. CNN's reporting selectively questions the statutory basis allowing judges to fill interim vacancies and fails to explore the potential political motives behind their decisions. Instead, it perpetuates the narrative of a politicized Justice Department under Trump, ignoring the political influences affecting the judges and their Democratic supporters in the Senate. CNN's panel discussions lack balance, predominantly featuring former Democratic officials and legal experts who consistently speak of threats to judicial independence. There's a noticeable absence of voices supporting the executive's appointment rights or questioning why Democratic senators actively block nominees from the current administration. Regarding sources, CNN relies heavily on anonymous statements from senior DOJ officials and selectively edited comments from Democratic senators. In contrast, it downplays remarks from Attorney General Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Blanche, creating a skewed view that judicial independence is the only valid concern, overshadowing the crucial principle of electoral accountability. Visually, CNN uses dramatic graphics and split screens that emphasize a looming constitutional crisis, yet fails to provide context on the real-world impacts, such as the backlog of criminal cases and the resulting uncertainty for victims and law enforcement in New Jersey, where judicial interference has left every criminal charging document in limbo. A more balanced approach would examine why, after years of Democratic control, the judiciary is quick to sideline officials poised to challenge long-standing issues. Instead of focusing on the personal histories of presidential nominees, coverage should question who truly should set law enforcement priorities, the elected executive or unelected judges with lifetime appointments. This episode exemplifies why many Americans distrust institutions that claim independence, but often act to preserve their power and protect the status quo. The politicization of the judiciary and the Department of Justice isn't new. It was widespread in the previous Democratic administration, which often protected political allies from scrutiny. As the current administration pushes back, the resistance from established institutions becomes more apparent, highlighting the urgent need for reform, transparency, and adherence to constitutional principles.
So if it is later determined, as it very well may be, that she is not legally in this position any longer of U.S. attorney, having her sign off on all these indictments gives every single criminal defendant in that district the opportunity to file a motion to dismiss their case because the charging document is not legally authorized, which is something that should be really concerning to the Department of Justice.
When the legal standing of a U.S. attorney is questioned, every indictment and charging document they signed is at risk of being dismissed. This situation threatens the integrity of the justice system, creating widespread uncertainty for law enforcement, victims, and the public. The Department of Justice should be alarmed, as such procedural chaos not only undermines public safety but also encourages defendants to exploit these issues for personal gain. Financially, the costs are enormous. Years of litigation, retrials, and dismissed cases drain millions in taxpayer dollars, diverting funds from effective prosecution. Local businesses, already burdened by regulations and high taxes, face increased unpredictability. White-collar criminals and fraudsters may exploit procedural vulnerabilities to challenge their indictments, potentially driving up insurance rates and forcing companies to allocate more funds to legal defenses, hindering growth and job creation. For ordinary families, this leads to higher costs and diminished confidence in the rule of law. When the justice system seems unreliable, consumers are hesitant to invest, and small business owners are wary of expanding. This uncertainty affects all sectors, real estate, retail, and manufacturing, as no one wants to operate in an unstable environment where rules can change suddenly due to decisions by unelected officials or partisan judges. The broader economic impact is profound. If this pattern persists, New Jersey could become a cautionary example for other states. Investors and entrepreneurs may hesitate to commit to a region where political maneuvering overshadows merit and stability. This scenario highlights how judicial overreach and bureaucratic disputes can suppress economic growth, erode public trust, and harm working Americans. We're witnessing not merely a legal dispute, but a struggle over the direction of law enforcement and public safety. The executive branch, accountable to voters, should have the authority to appoint and remove officials who implement its policies. When judges, often appointed by previous Democratic administrations, undermine this authority, it leads to paralysis and confusion. This institutional dysfunction inflates costs, wastes taxpayer money, and compromises the security of American families. The Department of Justice must prioritize protecting the public and prosecuting actual crimes, rather than getting bogged down in endless procedural disputes fueled by partisan tactics. Until the roles of judicial and executive powers are clearly defined, we can expect continued legal uncertainty, resource wastage, and widespread frustration, benefiting only the political elite thriving on perpetual gridlock. And there you have it. We are witnessing a troubling scenario. A group of unelected judges, predominantly appointed by Democrats, has overridden the will of the American people and the president they chose. These judges are not safeguarding justice. They are protecting their own authority and a bureaucracy that is accountable to no one. This struggle isn't about the law, it's about control. The previous administration weaponized these institutions, leading to the current state of partisan maneuvers masquerading as principles. If our elected officials cannot govern, then who truly runs this country? Perhaps it's time to acknowledge that the system isn't just and to start demanding accountability. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your comments below. This has been That News Show. That's all I have for now.